Open source contributions during work hours? Do you need to convince your boss? If your boss thinks this about GitHub,
it's mostly just like code examples. This is what I did.
or they fear this,
overly permissive licenses that now claim to have access to all of our source code.
and you've got a team of developers that feel code should just
work no matter what.
And stay with us. Find out why this is in fact a good thing.
Essentially running naked through the company.
And find out how your company could in fact
massively increase your development team without any cost. Hello, welcome to Narcolepsy Pumpkin. This week we've got something different and interesting. I'm going to be chatting to software engineer and ex-colleague of mine, Scott Guymer. We worked together approximately 12 years ago. So, Scott, if you want to tell us a bit about what you've been doing since we last worked together.
Yeah, so I'm Scott. I've been doing quite a few different jobs since we last worked together. I've worked at an agency since then, a digital agency. I've also worked at Sky, which is a media company in the UK. And most recently, I'm now a principal engineer at Philips, a medical health tech company based in the Netherlands. And I relocated over to Eindhoven in the Netherlands. And now I work on kind of developer experience and improving developers' lives at Philips.
So as I understand it, you've got some open source kind of products that you've given back to the world. One, how did that come about? And two, how difficult was it to convince Philips to do that?
We have an open source program team. So we actually have people from IP loss prevention and other teams helping to build out that team. We feel an important target that goes hand in hand with inner source, which is essentially applying open source principles to the company, right? And we're trying to promote the creation and contribution to, so not just creation of Philips open source, but also encouraging people to contribute to stuff that they use as well, to like move towards being net contributors rather than net consumers of open source, which I think is really important. A lot of it comes about by just doing and then showing and then finding the people who have an opinion on it and helping them tell us what needs to be done to make it in whatever way compliant. The team I was in initially were kind of relatively cautious around open source. They didn't want to be seen to be contributing, and they've been told in the past not to contribute to open source. So definitely not creating any open source. And that attitude is now changing. We're trying to change that attitude to say, look, it's fine to contribute to projects. You need to check first. We need to make sure the license is compatible and we don't suddenly open ourselves up to overly permissive licenses that now claim to have access to all of our source code and all that kind of stuff. So, check to see whether it's something that's permissible to contribute to. We have our own Philips software organization on GitHub, and we can publish things there. And there's the same process there. I have a project that I've created internally. I'd like to make it visible externally and create an open source project out of it. And the team, the open source team, take a look at the code, the intent. What is it? Does it fit with what we're trying to do? We're not going to open source a Minesweeper clone, for instance, as part of Philips software. We want it to be something that's relevant to what we're doing with the technology, whether it's healthcare tech or whether it's just tech generally. The project that I've worked on is self-hosted runners for GitHub in AWS Cloud. So we run a fleet of scalable self-hosted runners for GitHub Actions. And we execute somewhere between 10,000 and 15,000 jobs a day on these runners. And that's across the whole organization of Philips. And that's not every job, right? So there's still people not using GitHub that do lots of jobs. So I suspect there's probably at least 3 times that jobs that we probably could end up running. The guy that originally wrote the project, he was presenting at GitHub Universe this year. And it's a solution that's now used by big companies and small companies and everything in between. We've got quite a lot of people using it. Some of them even way more than we do, right? And it's really nice to see us building and contributing stuff back to back to the open source community and then actually seeing it getting used, which is pretty cool.
Is there any other benefits you're seeing from that?
For this project specifically, people are building features that we need that we don't have to spend time building, which is super cool. We're seeing people contribute, not just small bug fixes, but some substantial features, is a huge time saver for us. And we're essentially a very small team that built. There's 3 of us.
By seeding the product in open source, you've actually managed to massively increase your development team working on it without any cost to Philips whatsoever, but without any real effort from development team.
Yeah, I mean, we spend time going through obviously the pull requests and the issues, answering questions. It can take up quite a lot of time. It's nothing compared to the time it might take to investigate and implement some of these features that people really need. And another example of a feature that was contributed was the ability to run this against GitHub Enterprise Server. It was something that we just never had the ability to do because we don't run GitHub Enterprise Server. So we would never have been able to develop that feature. But someone else did, and now people that run GitHub Enterprise Server can use it. And
most of the time, the problem you've got probably isn't unique. But you might be the first person that's actually tried to address it.
Certainly, if you find that in inner source within Philips, is that somebody's got a problem. Usually, more people have got that problem, and you can solve it once and share. And that's where inner source works internally for us, and open source works even better. That we obviously consume quite a lot of it. And it's finding those projects. You could open source 100 projects, and only one of them gets to be something that actually gains traction and gets used. And you find you have to have somebody who's passionate about that project, who wants to kind of share it. It also helps, right? Just putting it on GitHub doesn't often.
Yeah, I mean, I've got stuff on GitHub, but I'm not expecting anybody to really do anything with a lot of it. It's mostly just like code examples. This is what I did. Never really intended for anybody to use it for any real purpose. But it's a similar thing to going on YouTube and other things. It's having the guts to actually put your software out there and let people critique it and understand that they're not going to come back and say, no, that's a piece of shit or whatever. You do get some genuine constructive criticism about people. So,
and that's the interesting thing about the way that we're trying to build this inner source community within the company is people have come from building software in their silos where only the person sat at the desk next to them ever sees what they do, maybe their team or whatever, to like essentially running naked through the company, right? It's just kind of, they're putting all of the things they're doing on display for people to criticize, and some people are worried about that, but the vast majority of stuff never gets criticized because it's never seen. People don't go trawling the 8,000 repos that we've got for bad code and start berating engineers. That just doesn't happen, right? But there's that fear of losing control and people seeing things that is interesting. And people who've worked on open source don't have that fear of putting out bad code or putting out something half finished is another thing that you see people worried about.
Yeah, I mean, quite often the start to a solution to a problem is invaluable to other people. They can finish that off. I mean, it's you might have had the right idea, but just didn't quite have the skill set or knowledge to just see it through to the end. But that's where the collaboration sort of comes in.
Yeah, you get this. I've not finished it. I want to keep it private until it's finished, and it's like, well, no. Why would you do that? Why can't you just
I mean,
build it out in the open, and maybe someone will come along and help you if you've got a problem, and that works.
Yeah, I mean, trying to gain as much feedback as early as possible in any development cycle is valuable. If you're going in the wrong direction, it's actually more useful to find that out early than it is when you've finished something and you've gone through God knows how much pain to get it to something that works.
And you also get that kind of sunk cost bias as well, in that you spent a long time making this mistake, so you're going to continue to make it regardless of what.
I'm going to make this mistake work no matter what.
Yeah.
I think most developers are guilty of that at some point in their career.
Yeah, at the start when you're less attached to something, then it's maybe easier to change your mind. Contributing to open source, if you're able to do it, it can help make you better developer, because you get other people's opinions that could be completely different to the way you do stuff from a completely different company. You get people reviewing your code saying, actually, I would have approached you like this. Maybe you want to try that. And you get to try different ways of approaching it. So I recently I made a pull request to the Backstage project, which is a project from Spotify. And quite rightly, one of the project maintainers pulled me up and went, "No, this isn't a great solution. I mean, it works and it's fine, but it's not very extensible." And encouraged me to change it, and I did, and the solution is now way better than what it was. And I just wanted to fix my problem, rather than refactor the dozens of files that needed refactoring. And in the end, I did, and the solution's better for it. But I think that's the experience you get from doing that. And then when you bring that into a company, you bring that openness and the ability to share and give helpful critical feedback without being mean.
If you found this video interesting, then please click on like. YouTube needs to know. If you want more content like this, then please click on subscribe and click on the bell. That way you will get notifications when we post new videos. And check out the links to other videos on this channel. You might find something else you find even more interesting.